अहो मे पश्यता ज्ञानम् हृदिरूढं दुरात्मनः पारक्यस्यैव देहस्य बहव्यो मे अक्षहुणीर्हतः अहो मे पश्यता ज्ञानम् हृदिरूढं दुरात्मनः पारक्यस्यैव देहस्य बहव्यो मे अक्षहुणीर्हतः वैष्णवीस् अहो मे पश्यता ज्ञानम् हृदिरूढं दुरात्मनः पारक्यस्यैव देहस्य बहव्यो मे अक्षहुणीर्हतः वैष्णवीस् अहो मे पश्यता ज्ञानम् हृदिरूढं दुरात्मनः पारक्यस्यैव देहस्य बहव्यो मे अक्षहुणीर्हतः अहो मे पश्यता ज्ञानम् हृदिरूढं दुरात्मनः पारक्यस्यैव देहस्य बहव्यो मे अक्षहुणीर्हतः अहो ओ मे माय पश्यत जस्सी अज्ञानम ignorance हृदि in the heart rudham situated in duratmanaha of the sinful parakyasya meant for others eva certainly dehasya of the body bahavya many may by me akshahunihi combination of military phalanxes hataha killed. King Yudhishthira translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. King Yudhishthira said, "O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many phalanxes of men. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 109,650 infantry, and 65,600 cavalry is called an Akshahuni. And many Akshahunis were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhishthira, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a huge number of living beings because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others. And when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. He is sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was created." Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And today, the next couple of days, hopefully, we'll be discussing on the topic of emotionally healthy spirituality. So, within this topic, when we talk about our emotions, like we can have physically healthy spirituality. What that means is that what we are trying to do physically, how does it affect what we are what we are doing spiritually? How does it affect our physicality? How does our spirituality affect our body? How does it affect our mind? So that's the broad topic, and we'll take this pastime from the Bhagavatam, and with that framework we'll discuss. So generally, when I take a Bhagavatam class, I use a framework called Chit. Chit is 3 points. We'll look at the context of what is going on over here. Then we'll discuss some insights. What is the implication? And then we'll have some takeaways. So today I'll focus more on the context because we are building up the context. And the context will be more or the same for tomorrow and day after classes. The Srimad Bhagavatam features death as a very prominent reality. In fact, we can say that the whole Bhagavatam is spoken in the shadow of death. It is at one level, the shadow of death is Parikshit Maharaj is going to die. And within that shadow, knowing that 7 days is not very far away at all. At one level, we all know we are going to die. In that sense, we are all living in the shadow of death. But most of us are not really conscious of that. But if somebody has been has got cancer and they told you got 1 month to live, then death becomes a very immediate reality. The Bhagavatam is spoken in the shadow of death. And that shadow of death is foreshadowed. Foreshadow means something which comes before. Something is going to happen in the foreshadow. The foreshadowing of that is happening in the shadow of death is Parikshit Maharaj. But that foreshadowing is seen in the story of Yudhishthir. Now, generally speaking, if we are on a road, if there is a tall building, if the sun is here, then the shadow will come upon us. But if there's a tall building behind us and the sun is behind us, then again the shadow will come upon us. The shadow of death can come upon us from different ways. Like something terrible is going to happen. Like say 2 countries, they know that there's going to be a war now and it's going to be a brutal war. So they're living in the shadow of death. It's going to come. Or a country has had a brutal war and now they're trying to pick up the pieces after the war. So Parikshit Maharaj's situation is the shadow of death is ahead of him. Yudhishthir Maharaj's situation is that the shadow of death is behind him. And in that shadow of death, he is speaking now. So what is he speaking? Now it is not so much his death. For Parikshit Maharaj, he was going to die. For Yudhishthir, it was Parakasyaiva dehasya, that it is so many people were killed. And they're killed for this body. This body, which is meant to benefit others, that has caused so much harm to others. For the sake of this body, so much harm has been caused. And he ends up overwhelmed by that. So the discussion that is happening is immediately after the Kurukshetra war is over. And basically the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam have overlapping areas. But the major area of the Mahabharata is the war. The Mahabharata happens historically before the Bhagavatam. Of course, the Bhagavatam has many stories which are ancient. But basically, here what we are taking on is the post-war. situation is being destroyed. So in the the Bhagavatam here takes off. 1.7 is where after the war is killed, one after another, the joy of victory is just being taken away from Yudhishthir. Whatever little joy was there. Now the victory came at great cost, immense cost. Bhishma and Drona and elders fell. So many people were killed. But for Yudhishthir, it was, see, generally when we do something, we do it with great effort, suppose. And after we do it, and we start thinking, was it really worth it? Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur built a magnificent temple, one of the best, one of the most opulent temples in India, at least in Bengal and Kolkata area at that time. And he thought his vision was through this impressive structure, thousands and thousands of people will come and become devotees. But then he found that some of his disciples were arguing over where in that building their rooms would be and their offices would be. Just like somebody living on the beach, everybody wants a sea-facing house. So there, the temple was on the banks of the Ganga. So everybody wanted a Ganga-facing room. And the context might be much more spiritual, but still the principles started quarreling. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he said that, he told Prabhupada that if you ever get money, print books. Don't get caught in building big temples. In fact, one of the last things he told over his disciples before he departed was that just 10 devotees he could have trained in Shastra. Just go out and share Shastric message. So my point is not the specifics about what he did, but the point is, I'm not getting into that issue. I'm saying that sometimes after we put in a huge endeavor to do something, then we start thinking, is it really worth it? Is it leading to the desired results? We build the temple to make materialistic people spiritual. But it seems spiritual people are becoming materialistic over here. What is going on over here? Isn't it? So what happens is, when we put in a lot of effort to achieve something, to achieve a goal, and that goal, what happens by that? The result is the opposite of what we expected. The result is the opposite, then it leads to a crisis. It leads to a terrible, terrible crisis. What have I done? What should I be doing now? Am I on the right path in my life? So for Yudhishthir, what happened was, after the war ended, if we go backwards, the victory of the war became especially hollow because of the death of his sons. On the night when they were celebrating victory, Ashwathama went and killed all his sons. And, okay, what did we wanted to continue our lineage, we wanted to serve our ancestors, and we lost everyone. What are we fighting for? And they were not even killed like heroes. They were killed like animals, slaughtered in the sleep. Death is inevitable for everyone, but for heroes, it has to be a heroic death. And that's what is befitting. And then, after that, when he came to know about Karna's identity, that utterly broke him. When he came to know that Karna was his actually elder brother, and Karna was the person who had an opportunity to kill him twice, actually, at least once clearly, but possibly twice. He had an opportunity to kill Yudhishthir, and he spared Yudhishthir. And why did he spare him? Because he knew this is my brother. He knew he had made a promise to his mother, Kunti. And then Yudhishthir thought, my brother spared my life, and I celebrated when my brother was killed. I jumped in joy. What kind of person am I? And then he felt angry with Kunti that she had kept such a secret from him. Couldn't you have trusted me with the secret? So, at one level, the situations themselves are not just demoralizing, they are devastating for him. So, the material existence is often compared to a bhavasagar. Now, sagar can refer to an ocean or it can refer to a sea, a sindhu or sagar. So, we'll talk about how in our life, when we get caught in the sea, see in the sea, what happens if if a strong wave comes, a person will get swept away. So broadly, if we consider the material existence to be like a sea or an ocean, bhavasagar, there are three things that are the characteristics of material ocean existence. There are external situations that come in our life. Now, those external situations trigger certain emotions inside us. And now, those emotions lead to actions. So, situations, emotions, and actions. This is basically what describes how we get swept away within material existence. We have faced certain situations, maybe somebody provokes us, and we feel great anger and we lash out at that person. We verbally lash out, maybe physically lash out, and then that whole thing escalates into a lifelong enmity. And that person's whole life gets consumed. This person did this to me, and I'll do this to that person, I'll do that to that person. Situation, emotion, action. Somebody is very stressed and maybe they lost their job, maybe somebody insulted them, and they feel very, very down, very dark, very bad. And the emotion in this dark, the action they take is they start drinking. When they start drinking, then the drinking starts taking over their life. They become an addict. And situations, emotions, and actions, these can completely sweep us away in our life. And now, for each one of us, if we consider in this sea, situations, emotions, and actions, which of these are the most uncontrollable and the least controllable for us? Situations, emotions, and actions. Where do we have the least control? Yes. So if we consider our level of lack of control, with respect to situations, we just can't control the situations. We all made be going to our office and there might be a storm and a car might get swept away and we might get injured. Padam padam yad vipadam. Hopefully such things don't happen regularly, but it can happen. We have the least control over our situations. Now we have some control over our emotions and we have some more significant control over our actions. So the scriptures depict characters facing situations far, far more difficult and disheartening and even devastating than what we will probably ever face in our life. So, in those situations, what are the emotions that they go through? And then what are the actions that they get? What the action that they choose at that particular time? So, now within this, when you talk about emotionally healthy spirituality, we'll be talking about how spiritual wisdom can help us process the situations, emotions, and actions in a more healthy way. How each one of our spirituality can be a resource for us by which we don't get swept away by the waves of this ocean. So that's what we'll try to discuss in these 3 sessions. Now, so that was the broader context. Now I started moving towards the insight, the CIT. Now, insight is that when we face difficulties in life, some of the situations that we face in life, we can anticipate that they are coming. Like we have a relationship with someone and there are constant quarrels, and we anticipate that things can go south anytime. But sometimes we think we have a very nice relationship with someone, and one day that person just stabs us in the back. We couldn't have anticipated that. So broadly, when we consider the situations, let's focus on negative situations. We'll discuss positive situations also, but this is the context is about negative situations. That's what we will be discussing more. Yudhishthir, there's a negative situation is there. The negative situations can be expected or they can be unexpected. Like somebody goes on a boat journey or on a ship journey, and they know that this part of the ocean is turbulent. Like if nowadays we may not travel so much by ships, but we travel by planes. And in planes, sometimes they say turbulence is to be expected now. Please tie your seat belts. Don't use the restrooms. Don't walk on the aisles. So sometimes we can anticipate the situations that are going to come. Sometimes we cannot anticipate the situations. They just come upon us. And in one sense, this is the difference between safety and security. The two words seem very similar, but safety and security are quite different. Safety is for accidental or natural danger that comes up. Security is for intentional harm that is sought. So, for example, a technical checkup that the pilot does before, or the airline staff does before a plane starts off, that is a safety check. But frisking the belongings and the body of the passengers, that's not a safety check, that's a security check. So safety check ensures that a plane does not crash because of some technical issue. A security check ensures that nobody can bring the plane down. So safety and security in that sense are two different things. And now for us, when we face, so we could say, I said problem situations can be expected or they can be unexpected. And accordingly, the safety for expected situations, we can have safety measures. For unexpected, now we can say they're not exact. If they're unexpected, we would not be at all prepared. But they're unexpected in the sense that I'm saying that they're intentional. Is that they are not normal. So now for us, at one level, we can try to arrange our life in such a way that the situations that provoke strong emotions do not come in our life, or they come lesser in our life. So broadly, the way I'm going to take this 3-part series is, today I'll be focusing on trying to regulate the situations that are likely to trigger wild emotions inside us. Tomorrow I'll talk about when the emotions come, how we can curb them a little bit, how we can manage them better. And the last session I'll talk, even when the emotions come, and even when we can't manage the emotions, how can we manage the actions? How can we manage the actions? So broadly, if we go back to this, the situations, they are perceived through our senses, primarily the knowledge senses, that is the Jnanendriyas. Now, the emotions are triggered in the mind, and the actions are associated with the working senses, the Karmendriyas. So in the Bhagavad Gita 15.7, Krishna says, Manah shashthani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. So karshati is the action that results from Manah shashthani indriyani. Based on the kind of situations we get in our life and the emotions that they trigger inside us, we struggle and suffer. We are subjected to the grind in life. So now, at a broad level, so the 3 steps are that we try to, first is regulate the situations. Second is we try to regulate the emotions. And third is we try to regulate the actions. So this is going to be our first session. So the point is, Yudhishthir Maharaj is feeling that maybe this whole war should have not been fought only. But I am guilty because I fought this war for the sake of a kingdom. And therefore, this terrible plight has come upon us. So, could the war have been avoided? Should the war have been avoided? Well, yes. The Pandavas did everything possible to avoid the war. Sometimes we may say, I did everything humanly possible. Because with respect to the Pandavas, they did everything humanly possible and everything divinely possible. In the sense that God Himself went as a peace messenger. And still it did not work. And the situation was just not avoidable because the other party was adamant, was completely inflexible. And see, when some strong emotions are triggered inside us, see, the emotion that is overwhelming Yudhishthir Maharaj is an emotion that is not that common nowadays, but it is not uncommon. For him, the particular emotion that is coming is guilt. Guilt is that I did something terribly wrong. Now, in one sense, the opposite of guilt is anger. Anger is where someone did something wrong to me. Guilt is I did something wrong. So now, of course, we could say guilt is the same as anger. It's just anger directed inwards. Normally, anger is directed outwards. Anger can be directed inwards. And that's guilt. So he is experiencing severe guilt. And the principle, if we consider, could he have avoided the war? Well, he did everything possible to try to avoid the war. But as I said, Duryodhan was just not flexible. And tomorrow when we talk about the emotions, I will go into that part a little bit more. But I'll talk today about, our focus today is on situation, not on emotions. But in general, we understand that in the world, things can go wrong at any time. The Gita still says that it is important for us to do lok sangraha. Karmanaiva hi samsiddhim astita janakadaya. Lok sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. Lok sangraha means the maintenance of the worlds. That there is an order in the world and that order needs to be maintained. Yes, eventually things are going to decline. Eventually things are going to fall apart in this world. Nothing is going to last forever. But while we have a role and a responsibility, according to our role and our responsibility, we need to play our part in maintaining the order of the world. Say, for example, right now the class is going on. So somebody is in charge of setting the sound system. Somebody is in charge of making sure that everybody has seats to sit on. So there is, before this we had the Guru Puja. So somebody is in charge of making sure that the Aarti paraphernalia is there. So now this is a system that this is meant to happen, and somebody has to look after that system. Now, if somebody does not play their role, then things will not work. Then the situations will go south. So now some people may remain calm when something doesn't work. Some people may yell and get angry. The amount of emotion that may be triggered by a situation may vary in different people. But the point is, situations do trigger emotions. And suppose, say, after this program, there is prasad. And the person who is supposed to cook prasad doesn't cook only. And then he said, what happened? I didn't feel like cooking. What do you mean you didn't feel like cooking today? It is your role. If you're not able to do it, you should tell someone at least. Isn't it? So now, naturally, in that situation, if somebody is expected to do something and they don't do that thing, the emotion of anger that might, or annoyance or anger or irritation that might come, that is a justified emotion over there. So when the situation triggers an emotion, that it's not that all the time emotions only have to be controlled. Sometimes the situations themselves are wrong. and the situations should be avoided as much as possible. And in modern leadership terminology, this is called as being proactive, that anticipating situations that might cause provocations and avoid those situations. Now, we can't always do this, but to the extent it is possible, that it's important that we ensure that the situations are themselves moderated, that they are kept within an acceptable range. Not every day can things necessarily be maintained exactly at the same level. So when we say situations, so Loka Sangraha is what? It is basically situations, they need to be controlled. Controlled so that things can move on. If, for example, now, if we are having a class, the sound system has to be there. If this class is being streamed live, then the Wi-Fi has to be there. Now, can we control the Wi-Fi? Well, we can say that we can't control it, but we can anticipate it. Okay, in this part of the, sometimes the Wi-Fi goes down, so will we have some backup? Or this particular network provider does not provide good Wi-Fi. This network provider provides us good Wi-Fi. So use that. So anticipating that situations that may go wrong and addressing them, that is primarily the part of Loka Sangraha. And when this basic situational control is not done, then the emotions that are triggered, they are in one sense completely reasonable. At the same time, those emotions can become very unreasonable in their expression over a period of time. So like, we expect somebody to do something, and one day they don't do that, second day they don't do that, third day they don't do that, and 10, 15, 20, 100 days go on. And in the 111th day, we might just explode. And then when we explode on the 101st, 111th day, say, it will not necessarily be because of what was done wrong on that particular day. It is because of all the pent up resentment that has been there, and that was inside like a volcano hidden, and suddenly the lava erupts, and it can burn everything in its way. So basically, if the situations are not controlled, then if they're not controlled, what happens? So it's situation control is too loose. Then what happens? There is frustration. And that frustration accumulates and leads to an explosion. Now, explosion is that immediately the person may not express anger, but over a period of time, that will explode. So when we talk about quality or standards, the idea is that those standards need to be communicated and accountability needs to be properly established. Otherwise, it will just lead to an explosion. On the other hand, if the situational control is too tight, then what happens? There will be suffocation. If every single thing is microcontrolled, suppose a young devotee gives class, and we want younger devotees to come and give classes, but somebody is authority, every second sentence they correct them. This is not right, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right. Now, of course, if somebody is speaking on the Vyasasana, we have to make sure that that person doesn't speak something which is completely off from the Siddhanta. But if there is micro control, then that person will be suffocated. The point is that in a sea, we can never have the stability that we have on the land. And expecting or insisting that on the sea, we have the stability that we want on the land, that is unrealistic. So like that, we can never have complete control on situations in this world. So it's like expecting the sea to be as stable as the land. And when we try to do that, there's suffocation, and after suffocation, there is again an explosion. This explosion is against that authoritarian control. That too tight control is there. So how much of a situational control is required so that the emotions are not triggered? Now these are associated with what we call as niyamagraha. Niyamagraha, the word has two distinct meanings. One is niyam agraha, just rejecting the rules. That means having no situation control at all. And niyam agraha is insisting on absolute control. I'll give example of both of this. So, see, in any spiritual tradition, whenever we are following any path, so there are some rules which have to be followed. If those rules are not followed, then nothing will move forward. So, if we consider niyamagraha, if we consider the point of niyamagraha over here, so if there is no rules being followed, we reject the rules. We reject rules. So I remember at one place I had gone. It is a small center, and I was in the morning program. I was doing Tulsi Aarti, and for the Tulsi Aarti, there was no diya only. And I said, "Where is the lamp?" And the organizer told that, "Oh, I forgot." I said, "What do you mean you forgot?" He said, "Oh, I forgot. Actually in Bhakti, Manas Puja is also accepted. So you imagine you have a diya and you do Aarti." Now, we cannot just play loose with tradition like that. Now, if we are doing Aarti, we have to do it properly. Another time, I was in the temple, and one devotee came to me after the morning prayer. He says, "Today my whole chanting was spoiled." I said, "Why?" He said, "You know that devotee who did Tulsi Aarti today?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "When he was moving the diya, he moved the diya 9 times instead of 7. I said, "Why were you counting that?" I said, "Yeah, okay, we moved 7 times, but why did you have to get? First of all, why were you counting that, and why are you so agitated by that?" So we can go towards complete rejection of rules, and we can go towards an absolute insistence on the rule in every one of its details. And both can lead to problems. So devotees can get frustrated when there is everything. If we come to a temple or if we are having a program, everything is the polite word is spontaneous. That nothing is organized. Everything is okay. We'll feel like doing this. We'll do this. We'll do this. We'll do this. So then what happens? People feel frustrated. But if on the other hand, if everything is rigidly controlled, that you cannot even lift your finger without asking anyone else, then you feel this is not a police state. Krishna consciousness is, Prabhupada says, voluntary. It is spontaneous. It's spontaneous in the sense that it is the heart's expression of love for Krishna. It is individual. So Prabhupada wanted individuality in our expression of bhakti. So we need to make sure. So how do we ensure that the situational control is appropriate? That it is by having a range. Range, we could say, is there is an aspirational level of control and there is a non-negotiable level of control. So for example, right now during the class time, the Aarti is going on. Now suppose in the Aarti, the Pujari using the bell is ringing the bell, it has a huge bell and is ringing the bell so loudly that you can't hear the speaker. And then if you tell the Pujari, "Please soften it," he says, "This is for the Lord. That is more important. You stop speaking right now." well, even the speaking of the class is also for the Lord, isn't it? But so if we try to have somebody becomes very rigid about certain things, then it becomes a problem. But if say if the speaker says, so a non-negotiable level would be, you could say that that at least the Aarti sound should not be so much that the speaker cannot be heard. Or then what we have to do is we have to have the two of them at different times. So we have to have a non-negotiable level by which the service moves on. Or two services are there, both the services move on. Now the aspirational level could be that we can be completely absorbed. So we have Aarti at one time, we have class another time. We can absorb ourselves in Krishna in the Aarti, we can absorb ourselves in Krishna in the class. Now this is just a practical example I'm giving. It's not the principle, it's not a literal application involved over here. But my point is that in any way we function, there is the situational control that we seek. It could be at a very high level, it could be at a little low level. But it cannot be so high that the person feels suffocated. It cannot be so low that things become chaotic. And that way, what happens? The triggering of emotions that happens in life to an excessive degree, that can be minimized. Now, in spite of all that, you see, emotions will be triggered, but we can minimize that. The same applies to sense objects also. The Bhagavad Gita 2.58 says that yata samharate chayam kurmo angani sarvasha indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. That just as the tortoise withdraws its limbs so that no predator can attack it, like that we need to withdraw our senses from provocative sense objects. That way what happens? The situation that will agitate us, that will tempt us, will entice and entangle us, we don't expose ourselves to those situations. And that way, we don't have to battle with our emotions. Now, of course, this is not the complete solution or the only solution by any means, because we can't control situations all the time. But where situations are controllable, they need to be controlled. And so that will be the takeaway that I talk about, that for each one of us, we can think about which situations trigger strong emotions in us. Which situations trigger strong emotions inside us, and are there any ways in which we can regulate those situations? So we all have certain things that are important for us, and if those things don't work out, we tend to get irritated. Then either we have to communicate to others that this is important for me and we have to do this, or we have to ourselves make sure that it is done. So once we are clear about that, then the emotions that are triggered, we will be able to deal with them better. So thinking, okay, which situations, we can look at our own life, look back at last week, last few days, and see when did our emotions get triggered very strongly. And then can we look at and find is there some pattern? What kind of situations trigger emotions inside? So this is where we are guarding ourselves at the level of situations itself. And that way, our emotions will consume us less, and we'll be able to focus more on playing our roles, doing our responsibilities, and serving Krishna thereof. If we do not protect ourselves from situations that provoke us, then much of our energy goes in dealing with our emotions themselves. And then we don't have enough energy left to actually do any service, to do what we are expected to do. So how we can, when the emotions are triggered, how to deal with them, that's what I'll discuss in tomorrow's session. So today our topic broadly was emotionally healthy spirituality. And within that, I focus today on the topic of situations, understanding the role of situations in triggering emotions inside us. So the framework I used was Chit, C was the context. Here we discussed how Yudhishthir Maharaj, he is feeling that the victory was hollow, empty. He's feeling utterly guilty because he's feeling that for his sake that devastating war happened. So for him the crushing thing happened was the death in general. So many deaths was what he mentions over here, and that's what tormented him. But specifically his sons and then Karna. All of them, it just made him, they were all like, all of this just crushed him. And then we discussed how, with respect to the insight part, that for all of us, there are situations that come in our life, and the situations trigger what inside us? They're external. What do situations trigger inside us? Emotions, yes. The emotions are internal. And the emotions trigger actions. Actions are external. So the Jnanendriya, the Mana, and the Karmendriya. So in this way, we get caught in the sea of material existence. And so with respect to the insight, I discussed about how while we cannot control situations completely, but the situations that come in, some of them can be expected. Some of them are unexpected. So now even you can say to some extent, the unexpected can also be expected. I talk about difference between, say, safety measures and security measures. So we plan properly. So once we have insight that we want control over the situation, so we discussed about the principle of niyamagraha, that control on situations. In fact, you can say all rules that are there, all systems that are there, they are meant to bring about control on situations. So control on situations, if it's too little, there is chaos. And then that leads to frustration. And there's too much control, then there is suffocation. So on one side, too little control means things go completely out of control. Too much control means people feel suffocated. So we discussed in between these two is what? The principle of Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha is that we have to ensure that the world keeps moving forward. And for the world to move forward, the order of the world has to be maintained. And that Niyamagraha, we discussed, this can be a range. There can be a non-negotiable level of control. And there can be an aspirational level. That this is ideally what we would like, but this is the basic level we need. And then the takeaway for us was that we find out what are our provocative situations, our provokers, and then to what extent can we regulate the situations that lead to those provocations. That way we will be able to, it's like if we are going out in the ocean, let's find out the times when the water is not stormy. If we go out at that time, the battle we have to face in the ocean, the danger we have to face will be lesser. And we can't always do that, but if there is an option to do that, then we should do that. So arranging our life in such a way that we are not provoked unnecessarily is the first step in having a spirituality that is emotionally healthy for us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Is there any quick question or comment? Yes, true.
What if the devotee gets stuck on the non-negotiable level and he's not able to aspire to anything beyond that? Kind of like being in a rut where he does the bare minimum that's expected, but he's not progressive in his practice. He just seems to be the same level that he's at, even after years and years of practice.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge over there. So if devotees get stuck at the non-negotiable level itself and not move forward, yes, I think there are two broad approaches to this. One is that we may all decide that in particular areas of life, progress is very difficult for us. And we decide that in this area, this is where I'm going to stay at. I'm not going to fight this battle. But that doesn't mean that we should not fight any battle at all. So somebody may decide that, okay, in my sadhana, I cannot go beyond this. This is what I'm going to do. But maybe they can study scripture more, they can do seva more, so they can take up a particular service. So if in every area of bhakti, we are sticking only at the non-negotiable level, then we may not grow. But while bhakti is a complete package, not everybody can grow at the same pace in all areas. See, for some devotees, by their very nature, their upbringing might be such that they grew up with a structure and a routine to their life. And therefore, structures and routines such as, okay, every day wake up in this morning, come for this morning program, that will be relatively easy for them. Some devotees did not grow up with much structure in their life. And not just did not grow up. In general, some people find peace and strength in structure. And some people find joy and strength in adventure. And adventure basically means the absence of structure, to some extent at least. So, bhakti is big enough to accommodate both of them. So those devotees who need adventure, say for example, if you consider the Pujari service, that is a very much structured service. This time we have to wake up the deities, this time we have to do the Pujari service, this we have to offer bhoga. Now on the other hand, if you consider book distribution or traveling sankirtan or traveling speaking, that is a much more adventure-centered service. In the sense that, if you meet some interesting person, you can spend a lot of time with that person. We decide I'm going to be here in one city, tomorrow I'm going to another city. So, we all need to find out what is the way in which we can susukham kartum avyayam. We can joyfully practice bhakti. So somebody may decide with respect to structure, okay, the basic minimum structure I'll have, but I'll extend my service through adventure. But somebody else may say that their extension of services, that, I know some devotees, exactly like yesterday I was talking with one yesterday evening, he was telling me, his spiritual master sleeps at 8:15 and wakes up at 1:17. At 8 o'clock, he's talking with someone, 8:12 he lies down, he falls asleep by 8:15. Doesn't need an alarm, he wakes up. And he's been doing this for years. Now, he said that I tried to do that and I just can't. And I felt as if I was a terrible disciple because I can't follow my spiritual master. But then I told him, did you talk with your spiritual master about this? It's wonderful somebody has that level of structure. But it's not just a matter of willpower and discipline. It's also a matter of neurobiology and psychology and so many other things. Some people are just that structured. It's nice to be like that, but that's not the only way to be a devotee. Somebody is not able to do that does not mean that they cannot be a serious or a progressing devotee. So I think we have to choose our battles. That some areas non-negotiable, but some areas I will move forward. Does that answer your question? Thank you. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.